Gen Z isn't broke because you're lazy. You're broke because the system learned a trick. They price necessities so you survive, but never escape. That's the subscription economy. Not Netflix, your life. Picture a normal month. Your paycheck hits. First notification, rent gone. Second, health insurance. Third, car payment. Fourth, student loan minimum. Before you buy groceries, over half your income already disappeared. Not on luxuries, not on vacations, on permission to exist. Then you swipe for food, gas, utilities, and by week 3, you're checking your balance like a heart monitor. Not to grow wealth, just to survive until next payday. That constant pressure you feel, that's not poor budgeting. That's a system calibrated so you never build momentum. Here's the design. Take something you can't avoid. Housing, healthcare, transportation. Price it just high enough that you can't save, but just low enough that you can technically afford this month's payment. The median Gen Z worker makes $2,800 a month after taxes. Median rent in 2025, $1,450. That's 52% before you eat. In 1980, rent was 22% of income. Healthcare was 22%, transportation was 22%. Gen Z pays in rent alone what boomers paid for all three combined, and it's not accidental. After 2008, institutional investors bought up single-family homes. In markets where they control 20% or more of rentals, Harvard's Joint Center found prices increased 7 to 12% faster. Not because costs went up, because they can. The same pattern repeated everywhere. 4 companies control 85% of beef processing. 4 insurers control 50% of health coverage. Internet providers divided territories to avoid competing. Once competition dies, they don't compete on price. They compete on extraction. How much can they take before you break? This is why Gen Z carries more credit card debt than any generation at the same age. The system is designed to keep you at exactly zero. Earn $2,800, spend $2,750. Never save enough to leave. And when you do manage to save something, the system punishes you for it. Savings accounts pay less than inflation, meaning your money quietly loses value every year. So even when you sacrifice, skip trips, skip fun, skip life, the reward is watching your purchasing power shrink. Investing sounds like the solution, but the moment you invest, you're told markets are risky, crashes are coming, better be safe. So people bounce between fear of losing money and certainty of losing money, which keeps most people stuck doing the one thing that guarantees they fall behind: holding cash. This is why Gen Z feels like no matter how disciplined they are, nothing sticks, because the system is designed so discipline alone can't overcome structural extraction. You're not failing at saving. Saving has been mathematically sabotaged. Now, you'll hear this has always been hard. Every generation struggled, so let's look at the math. 1980, median home price $47,200, median income $21,020, price to income ratio 2.2. With a 10% down payment and a mortgage, housing costs 21% of income, leaving 79% for everything else. 2025, median home price $420,000, median income $75,000, price to income ratio 5.6. The same house now costs more than twice as many years of your life. But here's the part that breaks it. Zillow found first-time buyers now need $130,000 in household income to afford the median home. That's the 75th percentile, meaning home ownership is mathematically impossible for 75% of Americans. Not hard, impossible. A minimum wage worker in 1980 could afford a 1-bedroom apartment in 95% of US counties. In 2025, 7% of counties. You'd need to work 96 hours per week at minimum wage to afford the median 1-bedroom. There's 168 hours in a week, minus 56 for sleep. You'd have 16 hours left for everything else, including your second job. This exact pattern has happened before. In the late 1800s, the Gilded Age, a handful of companies controlled railroads, oil, steel, housing, food. Sound familiar? Back then, workers weren't poor because they didn't work hard. They worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week, but monopolies owned everything they depended on, so wages rose slowly, costs rose constantly, and families lived permanently, one emergency away from collapse. They didn't call it a subscription economy, but mathematically, it was the same trap. All necessities owned by a few, all prices set just high enough to extract everything. The only difference? Back then, people eventually organized and forced antitrust laws. Today, the consolidation is global and digital, which makes it harder to see and easier to escape accountability. So people started looking for alternatives, move somewhere cheaper. Except the Economic Policy Institute found remote jobs pay 15 to 25% less outside major metros. Same work, lower pay, and those cheaper areas? Apartment lists tracked rent in mid-sized cities, increasing 40% faster than major metros between 2020 to 2024 because everyone had the same idea. Okay, skip college, trade school instead. Electrician, plumber, welder can't be outsourced. Except first-year apprentices make about $15 per hour according to the Associated General Contractors. In cities where rent is $1,450 per month, still need a second job, or family money, or debt. Same trap, different door. What about kids? Just wait until you're stable. The USDA estimates $310,000 to raise one child to 18. That's $17,200 per year. For the median Gen Z household making $75,000, that's 23% of gross income. And childcare for an infant averages $15,000 per year. You're working to afford someone to watch your kid while you work. This is the exit tax. Every alternative path, they already priced it. You're not escaping. You're choosing which subscription tier to live in. Now here's the frustrating part. Every time these numbers come up, someone says, just work harder. And I used to get mad. But then I realized what that actually is. A defense mechanism. Because if Gen Z's situation is systemic, it means one of two things. Either the system is broken, or the people who succeeded didn't earn it the way they thought. That second option is terrifying. So it's easier to believe Gen Z is lazy, because if the system is fine, then your success was earned. But the math doesn't support that. Pew Research, 72% of Americans across all ages believe the economy is rigged in favor of the already wealthy. The difference, older generations succeeded before the system fully captured them. Gen Z entered after the trap was set. This is also why conversations between generations feel so disconnected. When boomers were in their 20s, housing, healthcare, and education were still loosely tied to wages. If you worked more, you actually moved forward. So when they hear Gen Z struggling, their brain translates it into effort. Because in their experience, effort worked. But the system they succeeded in no longer exists. The cost curves broke away from wage curves decades ago. Not gradually, exponentially. So Gen Z isn't running slower. The treadmill just got steeper while the speed increased. Same work, different physics. That's why advice from the past feels useless in the present. It's not bad intention, it's outdated math. And it's not just America. Canada, highest housing costs relative to income in the developed world. Australia, median Sydney home costs 14 times median income. UK, average student debt £45,000. South Korea, Gen Z calls it Hell Yoseon. This is a global repricing of existence. The generation that grew up during the most prosperous period locked in their advantages, pulled up the ladder, and now tells the next generation the ladder was never there. And here's the part most people don't want to think about. If this system continues, ownership disappears for most people. Not slowly, structurally. Housing becomes permanently rented, healthcare becomes permanently financed, education becomes permanent debt, transportation becomes permanent payments, you stop buying life, you subscribe to it forever. This isn't a conspiracy, it's already happening. BlackRock and institutional funds openly say their goal is a nation of renters. Hospitals merge into megasystems. Universities become debt pipelines. Everything shifts from ownership to monthly extraction. And once a population rents its entire existence, wealth mobility mathematically dies, because ownership is how wealth compounds. Subscriptions are how wealth transfers upward. I'm 26, multiple jobs since 16. Did everything right, saved aggressively, avoided debt, built skills, still can't afford a home near where I grew up. Not because I'm not trying, because the math doesn't work. And when I say that, people think it's defeatist. Stay positive. Things will work out, but you can't fix problems you refuse to acknowledge. The Gilded Age didn't end because workers stayed positive. It ended because they got realistic about what was strangling them. Gen Z is being priced out through systemic mechanisms, not individual failure. Housing, healthcare, education, childcare. Every necessity turned into a subscription. Every alternative path taxed on exit. The math proves it's not about work ethic. and recognizing that isn't pessimism. It's the first step to changing it. If this helped clarify what you've been feeling, subscribe. We'll keep showing the math. Thanks for watching.